4,127 homes. Gone. Not damaged, completely gone. These are not flood statistics or wind damage reports. These are complete structural obliterations across northern Luzon, each representing a family that will never return to the place they called home. Satellite analysis reveals something even more chilling about Phung Wong's destruction pattern. The typhoon did not just destroy houses randomly, it systematically targeted the exact regions still rebuilding from Kalmegi's devastation. Disaster reconstruction specialists analysing the damage patterns discovered what they call compound infrastructure targeting, where sequential storms create destruction cycles that make recovery mathematically impossible. You cannot rebuild homes that keep getting destroyed faster than construction crews can work. The Philippines just proved that modern civilization has a demolition threshold, and we have crossed it. How many homes can one region lose before displacement becomes permanent? And are we watching the emergence of disasters that do not just damage communities, they erase them entirely? November the 3rd, 2025, 300 nautical miles northeast of Chuuk, Micronesia. What began as an unremarkable tropical disturbance underwent a metamorphosis that would rewrite the mathematics of disaster destruction. Phung Wong did not just intensify, it exploded into existence with unprecedented ferocity, feeding on sea surface temperatures hovering between 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, nearly 2 degrees above historical averages. Within 72 hours, this atmospheric anomaly achieved what only 3% of Pacific cyclones accomplish, rocketing from tropical depression to super typhoon status. By November 7th, sustained winds reached 185 miles per hour, with gusts exceeding 230 miles per hour. But wind speed was not Phung Wong's most terrifying characteristic. It was the storm's grotesque size. At 1,800 kilometers wide, Phung Wong became a meteorological giant, capable of covering 2/3 of the Philippine archipelago simultaneously. To put this monstrosity in perspective, its diameter equaled the distance from London to Moscow. The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration broke all protocol by issuing warnings before the storm even entered the Philippine area of responsibility. Only the second time in recorded history such action was taken. Dr. Elena Vasquez of Pagasa later testified that Phung Wong achieved what meteorologists call geometric expansion, maintaining Category 5 intensity across an area that defied conventional storm physics. The eye wall alone measured 60 kilometers across, large enough to swallow entire provinces whole. But size was not Phung Wong's deadliest feature. It was precision. Satellite tracking revealed the Super Typhoon following an almost identical path to Typhoon Kalmeegi, which had devastated the same regions just 5 days earlier. This was not random, it was systematic infrastructure assassination. For over a century, the Philippines has endured an average of 20 major typhoons annually, earning the dubious distinction of being Earth's most storm-battered nation. This relentless assault from the Pacific forged what anthropologists call Typhoon culture, a sophisticated survival system refined over generations of destruction and rebuilding. Traditional Filipino housing embodied this resilience philosophy. Bamboo and nipa structures were not just cheap alternatives to modern construction, they were engineered for rapid reconstruction. A house destroyed on Monday could be rebuilt by Friday, using local materials and community labour, called a bayanihan. Even the strongest typhoons rarely displaced populations for more than a few weeks, as communities possessed an almost organic ability to regenerate faster than storms could destroy. But modernisation transformed this equation catastrophically. Concrete homes, steel-reinforced structures, and urban density created what disaster experts now call high investment targets, buildings that take months to construct but mere hours to obliterate. When Typhoon Haiyan struck in 2013, it exposed this vulnerability starkly. Areas that once rebuilt in weeks required 3 years of reconstruction. The rapid recovery DNA of typhoon culture had been replaced by slow, expensive, vulnerable modern infrastructure. The shift from traditional to modern construction did not just change building materials, it fundamentally altered the mathematics of disaster recovery. A bamboo house might cost 50,000 pesos and take 5 days to rebuild. A concrete home costs 500,000 pesos and requires 6 months of construction. When destruction outpaces reconstruction velocity, communities do not recover. They accumulate damage like compound interest in reverse. November 4th, 2025 at 8 p.m. Typhoon Kalmegi made landfall in Cebu province as a Category 4 monster, bringing sustained winds of 155 miles per hour and storm surges that reached 5 meters high. Within 18 hours, the storm had carved a swath of destruction across the central Philippines that defied comprehension. 232 confirmed dead, 15,000 homes destroyed, entire coastal communities erased from existence. But the visible destruction masked an even more catastrophic hidden damage, the crippling of reconstruction infrastructure itself. Kalmegi did not just destroy houses, it systematically demolished the very systems needed to rebuild them. 47 construction equipment depots were obliterated, 23 cement plants sustained critical damage. Heavy machinery, including bulldozers, cranes and excavators, lay twisted and buried under debris across 6 provinces. According to the Department of Public Works, Kalmegi's aftermath demanded an 18-month reconstruction timeline with a budget of 45 billion pesos. But these projections assumed normal conditions, available construction crews, functioning supply chains and accessible building materials. Instead, Kalmegi created what disaster economists call reconstruction debt, where recovery resources become locked into long-term projects, leaving communities naked before the next catastrophe. Construction crews that should have been available for emergency deployment were committed to months-long reconstruction projects. Cement production capacity dropped by 40%. Steel shipments backed up in damaged ports. The Philippines had mortgaged its reconstruction capacity precisely when it needed liquidity most. And bearing down from the east, Phung Wong was preparing to collect on that debt with compound interest. When Phung Wong slammed into northeastern Aurora province on November the 9th at 9:10 p.m, it did not strike virgin territory. It hit a battlefield already littered with Kalmegi's casualties. Satellite analysis revealed a chilling pattern. 73% of Phung Wong's complete home obliterations occurred in areas still undergoing Kalmegi reconstruction. This was not coincidence, it was physics. Structural engineers analysing the destruction patterns discovered what they called vulnerability amplification. Buildings damaged but not destroyed by Kalmegi became death traps during Phung Wong. A house with a compromised foundation might survive Category 2 winds, but become a pile of rubble under Category 5 assault. Roofs patched temporarily after Kalmegi became projectiles during Phung Wong. Weakened walls became battering rams. Dr. Maria Santos of the Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers explained the terrifying mathematics. Phung Wong was not just hitting buildings, it was hitting pre-damaged buildings. A structure at 60% integrity does not face 40% more risk. It faces 400% more risk. Damage compounds exponentially, not linearly. The cascade manifested in horrifying specificity. In Dinalungan, Aurora, 89 homes undergoing roof repairs from Kalmegi were completely obliterated when Feng Wong struck. In Isabela province, entire neighborhoods with foundation damage from the first storm pancaked under the second. Emergency shelters hastily erected after Kalmegi became debris fields, forcing evacuees to flee twice in 5 days. Post-disaster analysis revealed a mathematical reality that's rewriting reconstruction planning globally. The Philippines discovered what mathematicians call negative reconstruction velocity, where destruction accelerates faster than rebuilding capacity. It's not just that storms destroy faster than humans build, it's that each incomplete repair multiplies future vulnerability. Consider the brutal arithmetic. Kalmegi required 18 months of reconstruction. Feng Wong struck after 5 days. That's a reconstruction deficit of 540 days, compressed into a 5-day window. But the mathematics get worse. Each partially repaired structure that gets destroyed requires not just rebuilding, but debris removal, foundation excavation, and a complete restart. A half-repaired house that gets destroyed doesn't set you back to zero. It sets you back to negative because now you must clear the failed reconstruction before beginning again. Traditional disaster planning assumes a recovery curve. Damage occurs, reconstruction begins, normalcy returns. But compound disasters create a recovery spiral, where each event drives communities deeper into infrastructure debt. The Philippines discovered that when disasters strike faster than the reconstruction timeline, you don't get damaged communities, you get progressively deleted ones. World Bank infrastructure analysis confirms this is not a Philippine problem, it is a global crisis. 89% of international building codes operate on single event design assumptions. Hurricane-resistant construction in Miami assumes one major storm with full repair before the next. Earthquake standards in Tokyo presume complete reconstruction between seismic events. These assumptions work until they catastrophically do not. Modern infrastructure represents massive capital investment, designed for 50 to 100-year lifespans. A concrete apartment building costs millions and assumes decades of use to justify the investment. But when that building gets destroyed twice in 1 week, the economic model does not just fail, it inverts. Modern construction becomes a liability, not an asset. The numbers tell a story of mathematical impossibility. Northern Luzon provinces reported 4,127 homes completely destroyed by Feng Wong. But deeper analysis revealed 2,847 of these were structures already compromised by Kalmegi. These were not separate disasters, they were the same disaster executing a double tap on vulnerable infrastructure. Traditional building codes assume what engineers call return to baseline, that after each disaster, structures are repaired to original strength. But compound disasters create what Dr. Santos terms cascading deterioration. A building damaged to 70% integrity and repaired to 85% is not 85% strong. It is structurally compromised in ways that make the next impact exponentially worse. Microfractures become major failures. Stressed joints become collapse points. The phenomenon extends beyond individual structures to entire infrastructure networks. Roads repaired hastily after Kalmegi washed out completely under Feng Wong. Bridges deemed passable after the first storm became death traps during the second. Power lines jury-rigged after Kalmegi became whipping cables of destruction. Each partially repaired system became a force multiplier for the next catastrophe. If compound disasters can systematically destroy modern housing faster than any economy can rebuild, every storm-prone region on Earth faces the same mathematical cliff. From Miami's hurricane coast to Mumbai's monsoon zones, modern cities are built on the same fatal assumption that there will be time to rebuild between catastrophes. Federal Emergency Management Agency analysis shows that in the United States, hurricane reconstruction averages 14 months for major events. With climate change decreasing intervals between major storms, the gap between destruction and reconstruction widens exponentially. Hurricane Harvey required 18 months of rebuilding. Hurricane Ida struck other regions while Harvey reconstruction continued. The reconstruction deficit accumulates like unpayable debt. The implications cascade through every aspect of modern society. Insurance models assume actuarial tables based on single event probability. When events compound, the models do not just fail, they collapse entirely. Banks holding mortgages on destroyed properties face serial defaults. Construction companies committed to rebuilding Project A cannot respond to Disaster B. The entire economic framework of disaster recovery assumes sequential events with recovery periods. Compound disasters shatter that framework. 2.05 billion pesos in direct infrastructure damage tells only a fraction of the story. When homes are destroyed, faster than insurance claims can be processed, faster than banks can approve reconstruction loans, faster than contractors can mobilize, the economic impact multiplies geometrically. The Philippines lost 460 hectares of agricultural land and displaced over 600 farming families, creating food security ripples throughout Southeast Asia. But agricultural damage pales beside the reconstruction debt accumulation. With Calmegi repairs unfinished and Fung Wong damage stacked on top, the Philippines faces what economists term a disaster debt spiral, where reconstruction costs compound faster than any GDP can absorb. Traditional economics assumes disasters are temporary productivity interruptions. Resources flow to affected areas, reconstruction creates jobs, economies bounce back stronger, but this model requires reconstruction to actually occur. When the next disaster strikes before the current reconstruction finishes, the economic model does not pause, it breaks. Investment capital flees, construction costs spike, labour shortages become permanent as workers migrate to stable regions. The economy does not recover, it relocates. 2.4 million displaced people, 19,127 destroyed families, emergency shelter capacity for 8,000. These numbers reveal more than logistical failure. They expose the mathematical breakdown of emergency housing systems under compound disasters. When displacement exceeds shelter capacity by 300%, temporary evacuation does not transition to recovery. It metastasizes into permanent refugee status. United Nations displacement analysis shows compound disaster. Refugees have 60% lower probability of ever returning home compared to single disaster evacuees. The psychology is straightforward. Rebuild once, you have hope. Rebuild twice in a week, you have futility. Watch your second home destroyed before you have finished mourning the first, and home becomes a meaningless concept. The Philippines just created Southeast Asia's largest internally displaced population in 5 days. But unlike traditional refugees fleeing conflict or persecution, these are infrastructure refugees, people exiled not by politics, but by mathematics. They cannot return because there is nothing to return to. The physical coordinates exist, but the community infrastructure that makes those coordinates home has been deleted. Displacement camps designed for 30-day emergency shelter become permanent settlements. Children who evacuated from schools that no longer exist enroll in schools hundreds of kilometers away. Families fragment as working-age members migrate to cities while elderly remain in camps. The social fabric does not just tear, it dissolves. Disaster reconstruction specialists worldwide are reaching an uncomfortable consensus. The Philippines' experience represents a fundamental shift in destruction mathematics that current planning cannot address. Dr. Santos said with characteristic bluntness, "We are not dealing with storms that damage communities anymore. We are dealing with storms that systematically erase them." The science is unequivocal. Climate change is not just creating stronger storms, it is decreasing the intervals between them. When reconstruction timelines remain constant but disaster frequency accelerates, the mathematical result is inevitable. The destruction versus rebuilding gap widens exponentially, creating what engineers call civilizational erosion, the steady deletion of human infrastructure faster than human capacity to replace it. Traditional disaster planning assumes a stable baseline. Communities exist, disasters damage them. Rebuilding restores them. But compound disasters create a new paradigm where the baseline itself erodes. Each disaster does not just damage the community, it reduces the community's fundamental capacity to exist. It is not erosion, it is dissolution. If 5 days between disasters created systematic obliteration of 4,127 homes, what happens when climate change compresses that interval to 48 hours? Pacific storm modelling suggests triple typhoon sequences. 3 major storms within 14 days are transitioning from statistical outliers to statistical probability. The questions facing infrastructure planners transcend engineering into existential territory. If modern construction amplifies vulnerability under compound disasters, should storm-prone regions abandon concrete cities entirely? If rebuilding takes 18 months, but storms strike every week, does permanent architecture become obsolete? These are not hypothetical questions. They are immediate planning requirements for anyone building within 100 kilometers of any ocean. Perhaps most infrastructure troubling is this. If we know modern infrastructure fails under compound disaster conditions, but lack alternatives that match modern living standards, what exactly are we building toward? Are we constructing future ruins? Investment portfolios of pre-positioned debris. Every hurricane-prone coast from the Caribbean to the Gulf of Mexico operates on the same reconstruction assumptions that failed catastrophically in the Philippines. When compound disasters become standard rather than exceptional, the mathematics of rebuilding versus destruction forces civilization-scale decisions. The choice appears binary, but it is not. Adapt construction methods or abandon entire regions. The third option, continue building vulnerable infrastructure while pretending compound disasters will not strike, represents what planners call structured denial. It is not planning. It is scheduled catastrophe. Climate scientists project that by 2030, regions currently experiencing disaster intervals of 45 days will face intervals of 10 days. By 2040, that compresses to 5 days. By 2050, multiple simultaneous disasters become normal. The reconstruction mathematics that failed in the Philippines is a preview, not an exception. 4,127 homes destroyed in one night is not just a housing crisis. It is mathematical proof that our fundamental approach to disaster-resistant construction has failed. The Philippines did not just lose buildings, it lost the race between human construction capacity and natural destruction velocity. When storms strike faster than we can rebuild, the question is not how to make buildings stronger, it is whether permanent communities remain possible in a compound disaster world. Modern civilization assumes stable infrastructure as a foundation. But what happens when the foundation dissolves faster than we can pour it? The Philippines has become an involuntary laboratory, demonstrating that civilization has a demolition velocity, a speed of destruction beyond which recovery becomes impossible. And climate change is not just approaching that threshold, it is teaching disasters how to exceed it systematically. Because 4,127 obliterated homes are not just statistics, they are tombstones marking the mathematical limits of human reconstruction capability. Each represents a family that discovered the hard way that there is a speed of destruction beyond which rebuilding becomes meaningless, a velocity where home transforms from place to memory. The Philippines just proved that modern civilization has a deletion rate, and we have crossed it. If this documentary revealed the terrifying mathematics of compound disasters to you, you need to see what's coming next. Subscribe to Earth Attacks and hit the notification bell, Because when civilization's deletion rate accelerates, knowledge becomes survival. Share this video now. Your community's future depends on understanding these numbers.